The Words of Kings and Prophets is Shauna Lawless's follow-up to The Children of Gods and Fighting Men, the second book in the Gale Song trilogy, which continues our historical fantasy story set in the 1000s AD Ireland with magic. So this is a fun series that combines actual history with made-up magical history, and it does it in an awesome way. Tune in to see what I thought of the second book.
This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
I read an advanced copy of The Words of Kings and Prophets in exchange for a fair review, and I really enjoyed this book. I thought it did an excellent job of moving the characters along in meaningful ways and setting us up for what I assume is going to be an exciting conclusion to the trilogy. The strong points of this book are definitely the character work. Fadla and Glormva, I probably butchered the pronunciation there, but Shauna can correct me on the Irish pronunciation. Anyway, our two main characters were fantastic throughout, and there was really a good amount of side character action as well, which I sometimes struggle with. I'll kind of break down the different categories of the book later, but just know that I really enjoy the characters. I think we also had a great job of using dramatic tension throughout the book. There's not a whole lot of actual battle action or anything too epic, but the dramatic character tension and everyone's hidden agendas and things that the reader knows, but the characters don't, that all plays really well and is really satisfying, and as a reader to have that additional information that the characters are kind of figuring out as they go and being frustrated at them for not picking up on things that seem so obvious. Like, this all plays really well. So great job there. But do know that if you are a reader that is expecting big action and set pieces and epic stuff, like if that's what you require in your fantasy book, then you're not going to see it here. And that's okay, because the promise of this book, from the beginning, what this book sets up to be is a character book, is a historical fantasy, is a blending of history and magic, and it never really gives you the inclination that it's going to transition to big epic battles and huge armies going at each other. There are some exciting things that happens, but the majority of the magic of this book is spent in the integration between the magic and history and the characters interacting with each other. Another positive that I failed to mention just now is that there is some good romance in this book. It's not the focus. It's not the primary plot of the book. I would not categorize this as a romance, but there is some good side romantic action that I think a lot of fantasy books just don't include or isn't done super well. But this one was good. And I guess you'll have to read and see what you think. But I think that the integration here of the love interest and the tension there, that worked out really well, and I think that's nice when books have that. A con, I guess I could say that the pacing and the plot maybe sometimes suffer a little bit as a result of the character focus of the book. There are definite lulls where it seems like we're just kind of slice of lifing things for a bit, and that's okay. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think a little more integration of maybe faster moving pacing and plot pieces that bring in the character development at the same time, that could maybe make for a slightly stronger book, a little more exciting book. I think there were some good instances of this, but there are also some lulls throughout. And then one other minor nitpick from me, and this may just be my fault as a reader, is I struggle to remember who some of the tertiary characters are and some of the things that happened in the first book. It's been a year since I read book 1, and I didn't do a reread before getting into book 2, so I just forgot a few details, and I felt like maybe it would have been a little bit stronger with just a few more sentences here or there that casually remind the reader of, this is what this happened in the first book, and this is why you should care about this decision, etc. There were a few things where I just kind of passed through as like, okay, yeah, like I guess there's a reason for this, and I took it at face value, but I think it would have been a little stronger if I would have been able to remember what happened in book 1. So I would say try to find a summary. I couldn't really find a great summary available, but I think that would have made just a few things a little bit stronger. Okay, so some ratings. Characters, I'm giving 9 out of 10. Our two main point of view characters, Glormva and Fodla, were excellent. Excellent development for both of these, and I love how they play off each other and are kind of opposite sides of the same coin and represent the two different magical factions. And as some things are happening to one character, similarly related things are happening to another. There's some good kind of poetic back and forth between events, and everything was very well done with these two characters. I also think the side characters were great. The Bracken and Murchad and Brian and Tomas, etc., etc. There were some really good side characters that were established here in two fairly like medium to short-ish books, at least from a epic fantasy side of things. Like I would say medium length book in other genres. Anyway, in a quick amount of time, in a short amount of time, a lot of characters were established, and I care about these side characters, and I thought this was really well done because side characters are tricky. There's a lot of instances where side characters are just kind of like a scrolling list of faces and you don't really care about them, but in this case, I thought very well done. The only reason why this doesn't get a 10 out of 10 for characters is there was one fan favorite, at least favorite for me, character that was mostly sidelined for most of this book, and I didn't like that. I would have liked to see more out of this character. I'm not going to say who for fear of spoilers. I'm assuming the reason why this happened was because it actually happened this way historically, and there was no way around that. But I missed the insertion of this character in book 2. Setting also gets 9 out of 10. I felt that characters and setting were 1A and 1B in terms of top elements of the story. I felt like I was right there in historical medieval Ireland of 1080. Not sure if that's actually medieval or not, but that setting was established perfectly. I felt like I learned some things historically, some customs, etc. Like I was right there in the culture. And I said this before, but the blend of magic and actual history was very well done and really makes this story work. Plot, I touched on this a little bit. I think it suffers a little bit from the extreme focus on the characters and the setting. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 for plot. I felt like maybe a few more big events could have been just a little more exciting to read through and packed a little more punch into the story. I think the small things did land because we cared so much about the characters, but some bigger events could have also been exciting. The ending has some exciting stuff, some kind of a big set piece that happens and some big movement with our characters and with the advancement of the plots and armies and kingdoms, etc. But maybe just a few more things throughout would have increased my enjoyment of the story. Pacing 7 out of 10 for similar reasons. There were just a few lulls where it felt like not a whole lot of advancement was happening, but we still enjoy it because we like the characters and we like hanging out with them. Yeah, but maybe it could have just been a little faster paced. I do think the last 25% was excellent. And I totally recognize it takes some setup to get to that point where you can't put the book down. It's so captivating and the pacing is perfect. But I think that's one of the challenges as an author, to really get to that point throughout and have more moments where that's happening. Finally, prose, I'm giving 8 out of 10. I think this was very solidly written. I think the prose added to this kind of medieval fantasy fairy tale at times feel to the story, and just the way that it was written, the way things were described, the way that nothing was taken too seriously until it was. I think that really kind of adds to this fairy tale vibe of it seems like things are probably going to work out for our heroes, but things definitely happen that are negative, and I think that's definitely the vibe that we were going for, and the prose adds to that. And that leads us to an overall rating of 8 out of 10. Very solid entry for book 2 of the Ale-Song trilogy. I'm looking forward to the conclusion of the trilogy, and I'm excited that it's going to be coming next year. This is not a situation where we are waiting around for a long time for the conclusion. I think we can confidently say that book 3 is on its way. I think that this is also a fun trilogy to recommend to your friends, be they fans of fantasy or just regular readers. This is a pretty mass appeal. I think it's got a lot of fun elements, a lot of enough magic to keep it interesting, but not so much that it turns people off that are not fans of the genre. So a lot of pros to the trilogy. And honestly, I'm excited to just keep on finding out about Irish history. Like, if not for the promise that this story would be concluded in the 3 books, I'm curious enough where I would have Googled and found out what happens here with King Brian and this whole conflict around 1000 AD. So I'm excited to get the conclusion to this actual historical story in a fantasy lens sometime next year.